Hello everyone, my name is Tobi. I am from the Azure Network Security team, and I would like to introduce a network security demo environment that you can use to validate an idea and perform a proof of concept for your network environment. So the goal is to be able to deploy a quick basic demo environment within 2 to 3 minutes. Let's take a quick look at the sample network diagram that describes this environment. So let's imagine we have a virtual network, and in that virtual network, we have some resources, say 2 VMs, and then we have another virtual network, let's call that VN spoke 2. So now we have virtual network spoke 1 and virtual network spoke 2 containing resources that we need connectivity for. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure the traffic egress from these 2 virtual networks, before they get to the public internet, they go through a virtual network hub. Now, this hub, we're going to make sure is like a fortified environment that provides layer 3 to layer 7 security. Now, how we achieve that is by introducing DDOS protection, which helps us to protect our applications from volumetric attack, resource attack, and all the attack that could bring about denial of service. Then we have Azure Firewall that does layer 3 to layer 4 east-west traffic management for us. And then we also have application gateway, which when combined with WAF, by the way, is Web Application Firewall. When these two are combined together, we can have a web traffic load balancer that enables regional management of traffic to your web applications without modification to your backend code. So if you have a deployment of code in your environment that uses say SQL and PHP, and you have probably omitted some PDO standards while doing that, while writing the code, then you can be sure that you have an extra option in front, like a filter that is able to check through this for you and protect against like SQL injection and cross-scripting attack and all of that. So the beauty of that is you have all of this in a virtual network hub, and you can have connectivity to your virtual networks in the backend that contain your resources. You can also deploy a web app as well. In this case, we have deployed Demo Wasp. Now, Demo Wasp is an application that is open to some web vulnerabilities. So you can use that application as a sample scenario to do proof of concept for web application attacks, especially layer 7 type of attacks. There's some more documentation on that in our notes. Now that you have this set up and you want to egress to the public, you can now have the internet and the Azure front door. Now, Azure front door is also enables global routing for your web traffic by optimizing for performance and failover for high availability. So we have all of this deployed in set up in the deployment toolkit, and within 2 to 3 minutes, by just clicking on the deploy button, you can have this environment available. And when you're done, you can tear it down and decommission them immediately. So you can do this 3, 4, 5 times, as many times you want, as soon as possible. This makes things easier for you, and is way better than trying to deploy them manually each time you want to do a proof of concept. We have now looked into all the resources that make up the demo toolkit environment. So we discussed Azure Firewall, we discussed DDoS protection, we discussed WAF, which when combined with application gateway is able to give us additional functionalities. We also discussed the Azure front door, and we discussed some of the resources that you will find in the demo toolkit, like the web application that has some vulnerabilities that you can also use to do some proof of concept for layer 7 security tests. So without further ado, we're just going to go straight into deployment. And to start with that, we just go to GitHub and click on the deployment link. So the GitHub page has the link that will help us to do the deployment. As mentioned earlier, you're going to have some resources deployed when you click on this deploy, and those resources are also listed here. These are the same resources from the network diagram in our previous slide. So you're going to have every single one of these resources deployed on clicking deploy to Azure. So yes, please go ahead and click on deploy to Azure. So you're going to have this custom deployment form that you have to fill. Go ahead and put in your subscription value. If you're already here, you should have a subscription. So make sure you just use the drop down to select if you have more than one. And then for me, I'm going to be deploying this in my SOC NS resource group. If you don't have one, just click on create one. you will have information, you are going to be providing some information for the name and the location or the region where you would like to deploy it. Then default username and password is where you want to put the username and password to access your virtual machines. So provide that information. And then if you have the information for your diagnostic workspace, for the workspace subscription and the resource group, please go ahead and provide that value as well. If you don't have that, just leave it as blank. And then DDoS protection configuration, turn that to true for this POC. And or like as mentioned earlier, please always remember to tear down your deployment environment when you're done, so you don't incur charges on the long run. So you can turn everything on for your sample space, and when you're done with your proof of concept, remember to tear down the resources. So after providing all of that information, go ahead and agree to the terms and click on purchase. On clicking purchase, the deployment will start as expected. So after a few minutes of deployment, which takes about 2 minutes, you should have the resources as mentioned earlier in your workspace environment. So you can see you have the OWASP Direct as the application service, which is the app that we mentioned earlier. You're going to have the app gateway. You're going to have the WAF policy. You're going to have every one of these resources in the deployment. And now you can go ahead and do the deployment as expected. So you can do your proof of concept, try out new network designs, try out the different things that you're trying to do, and then see if they work and they are within security guidelines. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave some comments behind. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and I would like to thank you for viewing.